Hello, my friends, my beautiful, holy friends. So here's for the third part of it, third, of this rainbow series. We've seen how the rainbow is really a teaching about how to see the world and interact with the world in different layers, not only from what we see from the plane physicality, from the 3D, right? From the matrix that we live in, but the layers underneath of it, and we can interact with it. We can view it first of all, we can understand the world through them, and we can interact with them. It was the knowledge given by God on how to access interaction with those layers, including more hidden layers. We've seen how humans try to break that bond, break that spirituality, because spirituality is the process of connection between physical and spiritual, and physical and divine, and the other way, and how they then usurped, taken into their own use the powers that God gave us, the powers of blessings, to command nature, to command blessings, to command other people, to gain control. And really nothing has changed, because there'll always be people who try to get more control, and there'll be people who won't know enough to ask. But there's a reason why people are vying for control, and we'll get to it maybe here, maybe later. So on the last step where we stopped, God gave humans another ability, an ability to create blessings, to create blessing. Not only to apportion it, to designate where it's going to go, but to actually create it, or to remove it, or to make curses. It's a power to interact directly with the divine, not just with the heavenly realms, not just with angels and channels and rivers, but to interact directly with the divine. It's a power much closer to being partners of God than it has ever been since the times of Adam. And of course, some people who wanted to use those for their own use, for their own specific needs. So one of the ways to access those powers was through controlling the holy temple. At first it was the tabernacle, the mobile temple, the RV temple, the Mishkan, right? And then when the temple stood already in the land of Israel, in the kingdom of Israel, it was through the control of the temple. I'm not going to say it, but now you get a hint of all the fighting going on for the last centuries, even millennia, over the land of Israel. So you also see there was a lot of infighting for the control of the temple and for the position of the highest priest, even among the Hebrews themselves, with all the things I should not be saying. So anyway, I'll just stick to the scriptures. So for example, the scriptures themselves are very vocal about how some priests were usurping that power. For example, in the story of Samuel, right? In the times when his mother came to the temple to pray to God to give her a son, right? They were saying how the high priest back then was Eli, and his sons were corrupt. And even though they served in the temple, they did bad things, and in some areas they talk about them and they describe them. So it was bad in the eyes of God, and God basically got rid of them. I want to point out that if they did really bad things, things that were not supposed to happen by laws, according to the laws, they would have died themselves, because the service in the temple was dangerous when it was not done right. But they did it for many years, and they're obviously successful in what they were doing until God took them away himself, meaning he bent nature, he did a miracle, quote unquote. He amended nature to get rid of them, because they were playing by the rules. They were playing within the rules. They were cutting through the system. They're not doing what they were supposed to do, and especially at their high position and high level, it was more than what the patient and misericordious God had patience and kindness to tolerate much longer. Later on, we see how the kings of Israel basically divided the kingdom, because, and even though one of them had a temple in his kingdom and the other didn't, they still found ways to connect to that divine, and not just the spiritual, but to the divine through the knowledge they had. And the thirst for that knowledge was what led them to do all these changes, all these, to put it simplistically, selfish changes. But it wasn't as simple as that, because each person really has their perspective, their way of looking at the world, interacting with it, and trying to do what's best for himself and for the world, for his view of the world. It's not necessarily what is good for everyone, nor what God wants ultimately. But sometimes people in their own, I don't want to say perverted, but in their way of understanding, misrepresent of what's supposed to be. Well, we know that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So that is where we come to David and Solomon, David and Shlomo. The King David, what is he known for? He's known for his book of Psalms. He wrote the book of Psalms, and basically in the Psalms he described the connection, the yearning of the human soul to the Creator, to God. He basically inscribed the code, the print of a soul, into words. What King David achieved, what he yearned for, what he prayed for, what he achieved, not for himself, because everything that has been done before has been passed on, whether in knowledge or in understanding or in the air, to other generations. So what King David achieved was that he created a new connection to God. See, the struggle before King David, which culminated in his achievement, was that we should not have the few people, the few leaders who may take the world askew off the normal path because of their own ambitions, because of their own view of the world, which may have been corrupted without even their knowledge. The push was to give more power, not power in terms of like, the power to connect to the divine, the power to spirituality, the power to be creators and co-creators in this world, to more people, to more humans, to more righteous people, to increase righteousness, to increase leaders and followers of the right path. That was the push since Moses, since in fact Abraham, since actually Noah. but really since Adam and Eve. So what David achieved, he created a new pathway to spirituality. If before the pathway was through magic, through science, through observation of the world, through interaction with blessings, and later it became through divine, like through connecting to the divine, like in the times of Moses, right? David created a whole new pathway. In addition to all those ones, he created the pathway of the heart, the emotional pathway, the emotional connection. And his son Solomon, what was he known for? King Shlomo. When God came to him and said, "Oh, you're so awesome. I can do anything you want for you. Rub the lamp the right way. And what do you want? I'll give you anything, any wish." And of course, he would have asked for anything, any power, but he said, "I want wisdom. I want wisdom to judge people according to your will. I want knowledge and understanding about how to run the world according to your will." Knowledge and understanding, not to make mistakes. In your mind, it should echo to you Adam and Eve, the tree of good and evil. But anyway, so God granted him the wish. He became the most knowledgeable man, the smartest man, the wisest man, and he created a new pathway, a whole different pathway than what his father had made. If his father created the pathway of the emotional connection, the heart to heavens, Shlomo designed the bridge to heavens. He acquired logic, the logical way to connect to spirituality, the knowledge. He built the bridge to heavens, basically. He was the first architect. It gave more ways for people around the world to connect to the divine, to connect to spirituality. What? I keep saying connect to spirituality, but spirituality is the connection. I'm being redundant. Maybe nowadays, maybe in our day and age, we do need redundancy. We need more connection and more spirituality in more ways. And David's path made the world closer, made the worlds closer. Solomon's spirituality connected the worlds. And from then on until modern times, which I'm going to skip because it's going to tick off some people the wrong way. There are too many politics that have been going on for the last 1,000 years, especially in modern times. But I'll tell you this. If before the strand was magic, signs, symbols, blessings, then divine service. In addition to those, two new ones popped up. Emotional and logical. You see the trend in that spiral of times. There have been more and more pathways to connect to spirituality, to connect to God that are being established. And more than that, not only pathways to connect spirituality, but new channels, new leaders. Basically, the rainbow, the spiral of time, the rainbow that we have, the 7 layers looking at the world, from being one single band, multicolored band, it's been splitting into strands, into a multitude of strands. You don't have anymore one main nation that's leading the world. Let's say the school of Adam, the school of Noah, the Abrahamic school, the school of Yaakov, Egypt, the school of Moses, even though Egypt failed, right? Now you had several competing powers. After David and Shlomo, you had, besides the kingdom of Israel, you had Babel. Then you had what? The Medes. You had the Persia. In small successions, or simultaneously, you had several powers. What's the correct word? I'm forgetting. I'm basically trying to find a synonym, echoing the unipolar or multipolar world, right? That's what we see today in politics. But basically, you had several axes of power leading the world at the same time. Sometimes they would be in different parts of the world, not even connecting, interacting with each other. You had new research coming out, new inventions being made, people developing new arts, new scientific discoveries, new technological advancements in different parts of the world. And as time has been going on, especially past the Renaissance, in the modern age, all these trends have been reconnecting into a single entity. And now people are kind of fighting for who is the more important, who should be leading, but you can see how it's all going together, it's all coming together. If in the 1800s, in the early 1900s, in the 50s, in the 70s, in the 90s, the nations who just knew about each other and went to meet other nations as tourists, as explorers. Today we can basically learn and dive into a different culture just at the click of the mouse or the touch of the screen. That screen. The spiral of the rainbow that's been divided and spread around is reuniting into a new loop. A new loop. So this brings us back to Adam and Eve. What was it that they did? What is it that they had and that they lost? And did they really lose it? What were they? You know, they were walking the Garden of Eden, they're basically godly creatures. They were buddies with God. They were like that with God, together forever. Literally forever. Literally forever. They had knowledge that could span the universe from one end to another. They named all the animals, for God's sake. Because he asked them to do it, for God's sake. They could see a being, whether a live being or a mountain, a star, a tree, an angel, and they could see its essence, kind of like in the Matrix. They could see hieroglyphs, ones and zeros floating underneath. They could tell what it was. That's why they were able to name all the animals according to the essence. The tiger was their pet. I want a pet tiger too. But I'm but a koi, but I want a pet tiger. They could see through time. They had knowledge that spanned the ends of the universe. They could see through time. They were able not only to create events and to create rain and blessings, they could create beings, not only human beings. They could also create astral beings, spirits, angels, demons. Eve in Hebrew is called Hava, from the word to be, Hava Nagila, let's, to be happy, to rejoice, right? Hava. She was the mother of life. And remember, before they were together, they were spliced in together and God divided them. Maybe we'll talk why at some point. And after they acquired the fruit of the tree, right, the fruit of good and evil, they acquired the knowledge between the good and the bad. They could see a thing. They could see things. They could see where these were walking on any path would lead to. They could see the good and the bad of those decisions. And then God said something really curious. He said, if they get their hands on the tree of life, they'll become like us. They'll acquire immortality. They'll become similar to God or gods. They were already partners with God with almost unlimited power. The only power that I know, I guess, that they didn't have was the power of immortality, time. And again, I just want to go back on those. There's a lot of concepts here that I don't have time to talk about in this video, but I'll break up later. I'll dive into later. But there are a few concepts I want us to get from this whole series. They were one human being, and God split them. And they had unlimited powers, except for time. And then they reset the system. They didn't like where the game was going. They want to achieve a higher score. So they reset the system to start the game anew, if we could call it a game. And humans started at a point where they basically didn't know anything but running around with buckets collecting the golden rain. And they had almost unlimited power to connection of spirituality, to connection to God and to spirits and to angels, but they did not really know what to do with it. And little by little, they got admitted into a layer after layer after layer of reality, of understanding, of knowledge. They acquired more and more knowledge. They expanded their ways of interacting with multidimensional. And then they got split away during the great dispersion of the Tower of Babel. And then they got split again through time. And they're slowly being reunited. But before they got reunited, the spirituality, basically, the rainbow, got split as well and followed humans, each tribe, each nation, wherever they were. Some got more, some got less. Knowledge spread them, and now they're being reunited. And the nations are fighting for the power of control, for the power of managing resources, managing knowledge and understanding. What is media? What is the race for the space? That is ways of knowledge. You can see how humanity is coming back together into unity. It is slowly being led back to humanity, even though it seems that they're amidst chaos and infighting. I'm gonna finish on this note, and there are two things I'd like to say before closing. When we look at the world and we see all the evil, all the bad things happening, and we think that there's a tornado going around and throwing everything around, and well, you should look back and notice how things have been coming together since the beginning of time. There is basically, do not worry. Do not worry at what's happening in the world. Do not worry what's beyond your life. Do not worry what bad people are doing. Because the bad people are also tools in the hands of God. The universe is self-correcting, and the spiral is alive. It's a living spiral. And the second thing is that if you see your life going in circles and you seem to be going nowhere, it's maybe a sign for you to step up from a circle to a spiral, to the ever-rising spiral. Because we have room to grow, we have places to go. Let's spread our wings and rise together. And remember all the talk about the righteous people with Noah, with Moses, with Abraham. The difference between a regular person and a righteous person is only for the decision to look for those signs, to look for the parking sign, to try to do just a little bit better, just one step better. So let's step on that uprising spiral. This was the Spiral of Time and the Rainbow, Secrets of the Rainbow with the Flying Koi.